So now we're going to check out my shifter. So park, reverse, neutral, drive, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're back in the garage. Dave here, Stances Everything, and we are going to continue working on my 1951 GMC project. Today I'm actually going to pick up with some of the stuff on the list that I can do for free, just because it's what I have here in the garage and it doesn't cost me any money. Last time we did the rear cab mounts. This time around what I want to do is I want to mount my shift indicator, and I want to measure for my drive shaft, order a drive shaft, and then I think I have enough metal kicking around to also make a drive shaft cross member. I know I don't have my drive shaft, I don't have my center bearing yet, but I know how those things mount and I know where I need to put it, so there's nothing to stop me from making the cross member. And then when it comes, I'll drill the holes in, figure out if it's going to go on top of the frame rails or underneath the frame rails, and then we can move from there. I might as well keep it moving while we're waiting on the drive shaft to be made. I do know the length required for the drive shaft I have to order. It needs to be, I think it's 54¼ inches in length. Jeff did give that to me when he brought the truck back to me. So I know I need to do that, but I do need to measure the distance from behind the cab where I want the joint to be. So for my drive shaft, we're going with a 2-piece drive shaft because when the truck is laid out, the pinion angle, it would just hit the back of the cab. So I'm probably going to end up with a cross member around here. This actually lines up well with my bed, so it won't be like the cross member won't be a feature of my frame. It won't stand out too much. And then I can put the joint, somewhere in here, a little bit of a pivot, and we should be good. So as long as I have a piece of flat bar that can go across this, span this space, either go on top or underneath, probably underneath considering my bed goes here, we should be pretty good. There might be, a situation where maybe it has to go in the middle somewhere. I think just tucking a piece of flat bar up underneath here will be the best approach. Probably here, maybe a little bit there. We'll figure that out once I get to measuring. So the next step in the drive shaft cross member bit is me finding a piece of metal that can span this. It just has to be a flat bar, and then moving on from there. For my drive shaft cross member, I want to use this piece of metal. It is slightly too narrow. You can see that it doesn't make its way all the way across, but I actually also don't want it to sit above like this. I would like it to sit a little bit lower, kind of similar to this, where you can see there's a little bit of a bump there. I'm going to make some mounting tabs on that, and it's going to sit down in there. So that's what I'm going to work on today, and I'm going to bring you over to the bench to show you how I'm going to make the tabs for this. To make the tabs off of this piece, I am going to weld this angle iron to the end. Something like this. That will give me a nice right angle for it to mount, and obviously I'll trim up the bottom side of this so that everything mounts nicely and give it a few welds. I'm just going to tack weld it together just in case I change my mind, but I am going to trim everything up as though it is going to be final. So just give me a sec to make a few measurements, and then we'll trim this down and then trim this down, and we'll get to tacking. Okay, so I've kind of got my life sorted out. I've marked out on here where I've got to cut this piece down, and then I've marked my 2 cuts on the angle iron as well where I need to cut that down. So the next step is actually going to make those cuts. Before I do that, I am going to put some welding blanket over the back half of my chassis, just so I don't mess it up with sparks or anything like that. All right. So I am not the best welder, but I am a very good grinder. So I have got this tacked in now. You can see now how it's going to rest on the frame like that. It's gonna sit there. I was hoping that this would reach a little bit further than it does, but it doesn't. So we'll see. I might end up adding another piece of metal on there, or I might just leave it. We'll see how things shake out once I sort of have everything done. So the next thing for me to do is to mark on this side where I need to trim it, basically so I can set everything up all over again and mimic what I did on the other side. And then I'll have this cross member sitting in there, and I'll be able to take some measurements. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm a little sick. Then I'll be able to take some measurements, sort of smooth everything out, get it looking nice. And then I'm not going to paint it until after I make sure everything works. But I think this should shake out pretty well. So let's see how this goes. All right, so here's where we're at. Cross member is in for now. Like I said, I'm not going to worry too much about the welds or anything like that at this point. It's really just a mock-up piece for me to kind of be able to eyeball where I want things to sit. So the next thing I'm going to do is air the truck up, take a couple more measurements just to make triple sure of where I want the, basically where I want the joint to be. I think it's going to end up being somewhere in this vicinity, so that when the truck lays out, this drive shaft can be straight to the carrier and then pivot sort of from here. So yeah, let me take a few measurements and then we can knock one of the items off that board off, and then I got one more thing I'm going to work on tonight. Okay, so I think I got my measurements. I am going to double check them with the truck up on the jack stands. The only reason I haven't put the truck on jack stands yet is just because it looks so damn cool on the ground, and I really want to drag that out as long as I can. But here are my measurements. So Jeff got me this one before, which is 54.25 in total, and then I figured the front section is going to be 32.5 inches. Sorry, I don't know if you can see because of the glare. So 54.25 in total. And then the front section is going to be 32 inches in length, carrier bearing, and then the rest of the drive shaft. I'm going to see if I can call a local guy and see if I can get someone to make that for me. I'm just going to triple check a couple things with Jeff just to make sure that I don't mess up my measurements. So don't be surprised if later in this video you see me just measuring one more time, just to make extra sure that everything is cool. And I don't want to order a drive shaft twice because that'll probably be really expensive. So there is one more thing that I'm going to do. So the next thing I'm going to do is a little bit of a make work thing, but after I do some welding, I just never like to go inside right after, just in case something did catch fire, there's some smoldering, some smoke. So I like to kick around and work on something that's quiet and that I can smell. So if you've been following this build for a while, you know when I did my brake lines, I covered them in this wire loom so that it would match better with the lines that I used for all my fuel. Jeff kept that alive with the wire loom on the wiring harness, and I am going to continue to do that with my airline. You can actually see that I ran a test piece here, and I do quite like how it looked. So even though I had polish airlines on here, I'm going to strike that out and just do cover airlines. Tonight I am going to probably do one side so I can do a little bit of a comparison just to make sure I like it before I continue on, and I'm definitely probably also going to do this. So I'll put the camera somewhere and I'm just going to work away, listen to some music, and get some of the wire loom on some of this hardline. All right, I've got all the loom on the Hardlines now. I did end up turning off the camera a little bit early just because it was really boring watching me do it. I'm going to show you what it looks like. This is exactly what I wanted the Hardline setup to look like. So if you remember going way back, I ran this Russell hose into my Aeromotive in-tank fuel pump, and then I ran this through there, and I just kind of really wanted to mimic with that. Now I know this is really dirty, I am going to clean it up, but I wanted everything to kind of look cohesive. That's kind of everything that I've got going on with the back half here. That's why the only two colors are black and chassis color. And when Jeff ran all the Hardlines, I could have polished them. Honestly, they probably would have looked pretty good polished, but it would have stood out as just something a little bit different, a little bit off in the back of the truck. Just a new color being sort of thrown in there that didn't really exist back here. I know polish exists with my wheels and in the front and in the interior, but there wasn't really anything polished back here. So I'm really happy with the fact that I was able to get this loom on. I do have a couple of little bits that I am going to tweak a little bit more just for some consistency, but I will get there. So you can see that I've got the loom on everything now. Runs on all of the Hardlines. It is in the notch heads in some spots. Some spots I couldn't get it in the notch heads, so I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to touch this up. So that's kind of some of the areas that I'm going to work on, but I think if I put some cloth tape there, or maybe even just a little bit of satin black paint in that little spot there, you won't be able to see it. The reason I didn't put I had to separate it here is just because of the way that this Hardline is fit. So you can see that this Hardline comes through here, down, and then goes through here and into the manifold. There isn't actually room to pop this out without either taking it off of the manifold here or off of the bag here. Right now, I don't want to do that. I do at some point have to replace one of these bags because they do leak. When I do that, I'll probably end up popping it off up there, and then maybe I'll loom this entire thing. Until then, I'm just going to kind of put some black in there, and you won't really see it, especially when you're viewing the truck sort of from this angle, which is kind of the primary viewing angle, you know what I mean? Kind of like when you're looking under the hood of an engine, you want to look from straight on. But even from the side view there, you know, there's a little gap over there. You probably can't really see it, and I think out in the field you wouldn't really see it without me noticing it. And again, this is a driver, so if you notice a couple small things like that, hey, it is what it is. But if I'm going to follow this line here, you can see, you know, nice black, that's black, kind of mixes in with everything nicely. This is Amazon loom, so it does work actually pretty well. It arrived really quickly. I ended up using like 1 1/4 packages of 25 foot to sort of make it all work. But again, I'm super stoked on how this looks. It's exactly how I wanted the back half to look, so thumbs up to that. The next thing I have to do now, and as much as it sucks and I don't want to do it, I got to put this thing up on jack stands. It looks really cool sitting on the ground, but I am at the end of the things that I can do with it sitting on the ground. And if you go to my list here, the most important thing that I have to do in this video is measure for my drive shaft so that I can order my drive shaft. And to do that, it has to be measured properly. And to measure it properly, I need to be able to slide onto this truck. So unfortunately, it has to come up off the ground, but hopefully the next time I set it down, I don't have to jack it all back up off the ground again to do anything. We can bang out a lot of things when it's in the air. Sorry, it's May 2/4, so there's fireworks going off, if you can hear that. But when it's in the air, I can work on the running board mounts, I can work on the drive shaft cross member, I can fix my shifter so that I get all of the gears and the indicator. I can do a lot of stuff when it's in the air, so it's time for me to do that and knock that one out. So I really actually hate putting this thing in the air by myself, but I'm going to put the camera somewhere so you can watch me do it. Yeah, I'm going to put the camera somewhere so you guys can watch me do it, and you can see how I get this thing up off the ground. So let's do that. Okay, so we're hanging out in my truck because the next thing that I want to do, the next free thing that I want to do is mount the shift indicator to the top of my IDIDIT column. So I have an IDIDIT column shift column here, and there's no indicator on here to show you where you are, what gear the truck is in or anything like that. Thankfully, I do have one that I bought. This is the shift indicator with housing for a 4-speed. So this should work well with my 4L60. It should be a pretty simple install, so I'm going to open this up, take a look at the instructions, and then see what I got to do to put this in the truck. Okay, so I've got the instructions here, and it looks like the install is pretty simple. I've got to measure 3 3/8 down from the top of the column here. Yes, I have a little dent in it. I was clumsy when I first put it in. I might try and get that out. So I got to measure 3 3/8 down from here. And then I have to mark it. I got to put this onto the top of the column, mark where the holes are going to be, use a fancy wire gauge drill bit to drill the holes, and then screw the indicator into place. This indicator piece here will double-sided tape onto the center of the column, it seems like, and that'll be what marks what gear I'm in when the column rotates like that. So hopefully I can figure this all out. I'm going to put the camera somewhere where you guys can watch me work. And then it'll either be in fast motion or I will talk while I do it, just to sort of get through it. But let me get some masking tape, cover some stuff up so I can make some marks, and then we can see how I get along. Okay, apologies, you all were in the way, but I have my holes drilled into the top of the steering column now. Turned out pretty well, all things considered. Super nerve-wracking. I did make sure that I didn't drill through anything. My signals still work. You can see one clicking away there. Signals work. Hazards still work. So we're good. I didn't make any mistakes along the way that would be detrimental to the truck working, which is perfect. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean this up with some thinner, just because there is some double-sided tape on the back of this, and that's what you use to install it along with the little screws. So I'm going to clean this up, and then I'm going to screw this down, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so I had a little bit of issues on this side with just some aluminum just not letting this sit down, but now it's all in. The next step is to put this pointer on. Once this pointer's on, the job is pretty much done apparently. So let's see what happens when I put this on. Okay, so I've hit a little tiny bit of a snag with this shift indicator. It's easier to show you what I mean versus talk about it. So imagine we're in park right now, and the way that the indicator works is you end up mounting the indicator on here, and you can see it through this window as it goes through the shifts. Now, I have park, reverse, neutral, drive, 3, 2, 1. So I'm in park now. If you listen, reverse, neutral, drive, 3, 2, and now I'm out of stick. So I need to make an adjustment down there at the transmission to get this to work properly. Now, because of that, it doesn't make sense for me to mount the indicator. I actually have put a mark on the top of the column here in masking tape to about where I think it should go, but that's going to change once I have the shifter set up. So from kind of here you can see how it would work. See how that mark moved all the way over? So it would be lined up with park right now. If there was a vertical indicator, it would be lined up with park. As you go through the gears, it moves up here, and that's kind of how it works. So I'm going to put a stop on this for now until I get the truck up in the air, and then I can fiddle with the transmission. Okay, so I'm back in the truck. I'm not exactly sure where I'm at in the editing process of this video. I usually shoot and then edit and then come back and shoot. Either way, we're back in the truck, and we are going to wrap up the shift indicator installation. So when I left before, it only did park, reverse, neutral, drive, and I think low. But for my shift indicator, I needed park, reverse, neutral, drive, 3, 2, 1. So I was able to fix that. But first, I'm going to show you partially it fixed and then explain how I went about fixing it. Now, there's no indicator on here, but if you just listen to the clunk. Got my shifter, so park, reverse, neutral, drive, 3, 2, 1. So we've got the full range, which is going to be all across there. I don't have the indicator in, but you can see that this line here is very, very close to the 1. It's actually on the 2 right now because I originally set up that line when I didn't have all the full range. But I definitely have the full range now. So we can jam that back up into park, and I'll show you how I got to fixing it. If you remember in my last video, I talked about this binder that Jeff made me with all of the instructions for the things on the truck that I might need to consult. So obviously, you know, I got my harness stuff, aeromotive fuel pump. This is for my American Auto Wire chassis harness. And so I was like, man, there's got to be instructions for how to adjust this in here. So I got to flipping through everything. Eventually, I landed on B&M installation instructions for my brake, bracket, and lever kit for the 4L60, and then with a park reverse neutral drive low switch. So first what I did, I thought I didn't have this correct switch, but it turned out I did have this correct switch. What was incorrect is, it says right here on the cable swivel, it says right there on the cable swivel to use the front hole. It was actually installed in the middle hole here, and that's what was preventing it from moving through the full range of gears. So looking at this piece of paper is not very helpful, so I'm going to hop onto the truck and show you how it works. Okay, you'll have to forgive me for the audio and the video here a little bit. I am under the truck right now, so I'm going to do my best to explain to you how this works. So this right here is the shift lever. This moves forward and back through the gears. And then you've got, this is my shifter cable, is attached up at the top. I'll show you where that's attached to the column. And what happens basically is when the cable is pulled, it moves this lever through its range of motion. And my problem was pretty simple. This little bit here was attached to here, so it wasn't going through the full range of motion. If you've ever worked on a bike brake system before, this setup is pretty similar. So you've got your cable stop here, and then the inner cable, which is kind of a rod in this case, is what pulls things through. Obviously, you know, it's a cable rod-ish thing through here, your cable stop, and then your swivel is what they call it at the end. So I had to adjust first my cable stop, so I had to move it out a little bit, and then I had to move the swivel out a little bit as well. But now all is well. It's just mounted on the other side with a cotter pin, and basically what happens is when you move this along, that's what goes through the gears. So I'm going to set the camera up in a spot where you guys can see it work to demonstrate what I'm talking about, and then I'll show you how it works up top. It's a pretty simple setup. The instructions definitely helped, but yeah, it's pretty simple overall, and I'm pretty stoked on just how easy it is to maneuver and adjust. So it's a little dark side of the moon on this side of the garage here, but you can see that that is the column shifter down there. The cable is located down there, and that's how everything actuates. So again, I'll put the camera in a spot where you can watch it work, and it should really help explain how the whole system works here. It's pretty simple, but it's very, very effective. Okay, so now we're back in the truck, and the only thing left to do is to put the indicator in the right spot. So I am going to take off this piece of tape that I put on here with the mark on the top of it. I'm going to get everything centered up, cleaned up, and then put that little indicator on, and then we'll be able to call this job finished. I finished the install. It's a little bit hard to see, but you can see if there's an indicator on there now. You view it through this kind of window in here. When you move the shifter, that moves along the way and shows you where you are in the gears. Now, while it does go all the way to 1, my shifter definitely goes to 1, the indicator is slightly off. There isn't really too much I can do about that. I guess there's just a little bit of vagueness in how they put the numbers and the way that it works with my shifter. But honestly, that represents park. And if someone else is hopping the truck, if you know, my wife, someone who's doing an alignment or something, they can hit it all the way over to drive. Drive is accurate. Neutral is accurate. Reverse is accurate. That's honestly all you need. So I can call this job done. Okay, so that's a wrap for this one. Thanks again for watching. I think we got a decent amount of work accomplished. I am going to immediately pick up with the next task for the next video. So definitely be sure to give me a like, a comment, follow along with the build. I'm definitely thrashing away on this to try and get it moving for this summer. I'd really love to have it on the road, you know, get an ice cream or something like that with my family. So I'm going to keep plugging away there. So thanks again for watching this one. Let me know if you have any questions or comments below, and we'll see you in the next video.